What? You look like you never saw a 31-year-old in a Pikachu hat talking about Pokemon. Wow, it's hard to believe that Pokemon has been around for 20 years now. The series that grew from Satoshi Tajiri's bug collecting hobby has grown from its humble origins on the Game Boy to a worldwide phenomenon enjoyed by gamers of all ages. So in celebration of Pokemon's 20th anniversary, I'm going to list off my favorite Pokemon from all 6 generations. Now, there are many reasons I may like a certain Pokemon, such as design and concept, how well they help me in battle, or something else entirely. Overall, this is mainly just based on my memories of training these Pokemon and my own experiences with the series. So grab your Pokedex and stock up on Pokeballs. It's game time! Golem is a Pokemon that often manages to find a place on my team. Ever since the very beginning, Golem has always served me well as my staple rock-ground type defensive wall, as well as providing some decent offense with its stab moves, particularly Earthquake and Stone Edge. I was kind of annoyed at the fact that getting a Golem required that you trade a Graveler, but I felt that it was well worth it in the end. I really prefer Golem's streamlined design as opposed to Graveler's, which is rather rough around the edges, so to speak. The Pokedex entries for this heavyweight speak to its defensive strength, saying that it can withstand a ton of dynamite. Its durability was further enhanced in Gen 5 with the buff to the Sturdy ability, usually guaranteeing that Golem will get at least one chance to attack. Granted, its common dual type gives it quad weakness against water and grass, but why would you send it out against one of those unless you had no other choice? I'll admit nostalgia is a big reason for me liking Golem, but that's just how I roll. X and Y had a bit of a mixed roster, but during my playthrough of X, Heliolisk was a Pokemon that saw a lot of action. With its best stats being speed and special attack, it was able to earn a place on my team as a decent special sweeper, while still having manageable special defense, though it comes at the cost of physical bulk. In particular, I sought out its pre-evolved form, Helioptile, that had the Dry Skin ability, which allows it to absorb water-type moves. This made it an ideal partner for my Squirtle, especially since Surf hits your opponents and your partner. Yeah, way to turn a problem into an advantage. I also really like the concept behind Heliolisk. Based on a frilled lizard by its design, with a frill resembling the sun, it serves as a walking solar panel. According to the Pokedex, it can convert solar energy into enough electricity to power a skyscraper. It can actually use that electricity to stimulate the muscles in its legs to make itself run really fast. Kind of like... Well, maybe not that fast, but the Flash did get his powers from a bolt of lightning, so... yeah. There weren't that many new electric types introduced in Gen 2, but of the ones that did come into being, I am so glad that Ampharos found a place on my team. First of all, I really like its design as well as its entire evolutionary line. I just like the concept of using the static electricity that can build up in a sheep's wool as a means of attack. Kind of like a certain robot master introduced years later, which may or may not receive a certain degree of undeserved hate. Also, all 3 of these Pokemon are just so gosh darn adorable. I mean, take one look at Ampharos and tell me you wouldn't want to give it a big ol' hug. I also think it's cool how its tail is bright enough to light up a lighthouse. Well, there's a good Samaritan right there. In battle, Ampharos' stats are unusual for an electric type. It's actually among the slowest electric types in the series. However, it makes up for that somewhat with some high-voltage special attack. This Pokemon was a reliable part of my team in Gen 2, and I'm so glad it got a Mega Evolution in Gen 6. Especially because it's so fluffy! I'll admit Oshawott wasn't my first choice of the Unova starters, as it didn't have the moves I thought I needed in the early going. Thank Arceus that White 2 gave me the chance to appreciate this cute little guy for what it was. Oshawott and its evolutionary line just appeal to me on some level. In terms of design, the evolutionary line has a pretty cool concept, with Oshawott as the adorable baby found on the steps of the temple by the master, Dewott being the teenager in the midst of its swordsman's training, and Samurott being the fully grown samurai who has taken up the master's sword. Oshawott's signature feature is its Scout Shop, which it uses both offensively with its trademark Razor Shell, and defensively with its hidden ability Shell Armor, which protects it from critical hits. Appropriate to its motif, Oshawott, along with its evolutions, is primarily offensive. Its stats, striking a balance between physical and special attack, allow it to make good use of the moves in its arsenal. Oshawott was a force to be reckoned with on my team throughout my playthrough of White 2, mowing down anything in its way. In case you can't tell, I'm a fan of Samurai. Can you blame me? From one water-type starter to another, this time it's Gen 3's Mudkip. Mudkip was the starter that carried me through the majority of Gen 3 and across all the water in Hoenn that gets over-exaggerated. This quirky little guy has a fun design. It's partially based on the Mudskipper, mainly from how it sleeps in mud, and also has some influence from, what the hell is an axolotl? I appreciate how Mudkip grows from a cute little bugger into the lovably derpy Marshtomp, and eventually into a hulking brood as Swampert. Even as a youngster, it still has enough power to break through boulders bigger than itself. It also has an uncommon typing from Stage 2 onwards, being Water Ground, which is actually a pretty solid typing, being only weak to Grass, though it is a quad weakness. This leads to the other thing I like about this line, its reliability in battle. The Mudkip line, and Swampert in particular, is a juggernaut. Aside from its speed, its stats are all very solid, and in fact, Swampert has the highest base stat total of all starters to this day. It can take a hit and dish it out just as well. This is further supported by a huge and diverse move pool, and even more by Swampert's Mega Evolution. Speaking of which, is it just me, or did Mega Swampert skip leg day? Must be gym buddies with Knuckles. Funny, I seem to have a particular fondness for the starters. I guess it may just be sentimentality on my part, but the game seemed to set up a bond between you and the first Pokemon you choose on your journey. My first Pokemon was Bulbasaur. I tend to pick my starters based mainly on the first few gyms, a habit which started with Bulbasaur and lasted me until Gen 5. I have so many fond memories of my first starter just wrecking Brock and Misty and sticking with me right through the bitter end. With its stats mainly focused in its specials, it has a good variety of moves to damage the opponent, as well as inflict status ailments in order to disrupt them. Its Mega Evolution as Venusaur further boosts its defenses, as well as giving it the Thick Fat ability to offset two of its type weaknesses. The concept behind Bulbasaur in its line is something that just grew on me. I like the idea of a lizard-plant hybrid with both aspects of its being growing proportionally as it evolves. Again, this is more nostalgia than anything else, and you may not have the same attachment to your first Pokemon that I did, but I guess that's just how I am. Chandeleur has developed quite a following amongst ghost types that aren't named Gengar, and I'm one of those people. My favorite Pokemon in Gen 5, Chandeleur is the kind of Pokemon that just appeals to my dark side. When I first saw it on Chantal's team in my playthrough of Black, I thought, man, that looks cool. You can say what you want about all the Pokemon based on household objects, but Game Freak can still find a way to make giving life to the inanimate something that's both creepy and unique. This Pokemon is based on the kind of chandelier you'd find in a haunted house. According to its Pokedex entry, it uses its flames to entrance its victims and then burns their souls without harming their bodies. Wait, I've heard something similar before. Oh my god! Eventually, I caught a Litwick in White 2, which I evolved into a Chandelure for my team, and boy am I glad I did. Its unique Fire Ghost typing gives it 7 resistances and 2 immunities. It also has a wide move pool to take advantage of its ridiculous special attack stat, which can reach a maximum of 427! That's the highest of all non-legendary and non-mega fire types. Maybe old Dracula should have had a few of these hanging around. The Dark type is my favorite type overall, mainly for how it was introduced in Gen 2 as a counter to the then overpowered Psychic type. Strangely, however, only one Dark type made my list. That, my friends, is Darkrai. This legendary Spectre caught my attention from the very moment it was introduced. First off, it's got some monstrous stats. It's tied with Weavile for the highest base speed among Dark types, and its special attack is geared to make use of its frightening move pool. Also, I like how its design has that feel of menace to it. It's basically like the boogeyman of the Pokemon world, like that shadow whose presence you can't quite shake. This also extends to its lore, which is actually reflected in its abilities in battle, something that deserves major props. It has the power to put its victims to sleep, shown by its signature move, Dark Void. Once they're trapped in the realm of dreams, Darkrai causes them to have nightmares, as displayed by its unique ability, Bad Dreams, which deals 1/8 of a sleeping Pokemon's HP as damage each turn. That is scary. But strangely, this is actually a means of self-defense and not an act of intentional evil. Anyone who's seen the rise of Darkrai can see that. And yet, Darkrai's power is used for evil in every spin-off in which it's involved in the plot. I've got a feeling that if it weren't for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Gallade probably wouldn't be nearly this high on the list. But as it stands, this noble swordsman of the Sinnoh region carved out a place among my favorites. Catching a male Ralts was one of the best decisions I made in my playthrough of Alpha Sapphire because it allowed me to get this badass. For starters, I love its design, being modeled after a gladiator, complete with a helmet. I also love how its elbows extend like beam katanas when it fights. It's a master of courtesy and swordsmanship, but it can also sense its opponent's moves and unleashes its full power to protect others. It's one of only a few Pokemon to be both Psychic and Fighting type, and as such, its stats focus mainly on physical attack and special defense, allowing it to tap into the power of its diverse move pool. It also has access to some rather effective moves it can't use as Gardevoir, such as Close Combat and Psycho Cut. I also have to give Gallade credit for one more thing. It has my favorite Mega Evolution in the series, hands down. I mean, not only does it have the highest attack of any non-legendary Psychic type, but take a look at the shape of those arm blades. Those are totally dual discs. You are not going to convince me otherwise. Before we get to my favorite Pokemon, here's some honorable mentions from each generation. Squirtle from Gen 1 for being so cute. Umbreon from Gen 2, my favorite evolution. Gardevoir from Gen 3 for its capabilities and graceful design. Luxray from Gen 4 for being one of Sinnoh's few good electric types. Crocodile from Gen 5 for its power and typing. And Chespin from Gen 6, my starter in X. Of the now 721 pocket monsters in existence, none has intrigued nor fascinated me more than Deoxys. Deoxys has just so many things I like about it, not only in its abilities, but in its concept and lore that make it my favorite Pokemon ever. For one thing, it's an absolute force in battle. I mean, being a mythical Pokemon pretty much gives it carte blanche to wreck shop. The main gimmick behind Deoxys in battle is its 4 forms. Each of them has a different emphasis. Normal form gives it balanced attacking stats, attack form makes it an incredible sweeper, defense form allows it to take a hit and then some, and speed form gives this Pokemon the highest unassisted speed stat in the series. It also possesses the devastating signature move, Psycho Boost, which has the highest attack power of any Psychic-type move. But there's a lot more to it than that. This thing is an alien virus that became a Pokemon after mutating when exposed to a laser beam. Being the resident extraterrestrial, it looks appropriately bizarre. It can change its form and even regenerate as shown in the movie. Then there's the kicker. Deoxys has the most ingenious concept I've ever seen for a Pokemon. Instead of a deity or mythical beast, Deoxys' concept reaches into the very fundamentals of our own genetic code, DNA. And Game Freak makes no secret of it. Its name is based on deoxyribonucleic acid. Its Pokedex entry calls it the DNA Pokemon. Its arms resemble a double helix. Its form's initials spell out DNAs. I know I'm getting a little overexcited here, but can you blame me? Deoxys is everything I love in a Pokemon. It's awesome in battle, its designs are cool, its concept is genius, even its battle theme kicks ass. It's ideas like this that keep me coming back with each new generation. I'm the Quarter Guy telling you that you're never too old for Pokemon. After all, I'm in my 30s and I'm still playing it. Thanks for watching this video. I had a lot of fun with this one. Believe me, it was hard to pick just 10 Pokemon from over 700. As always, be sure to leave your feedback in the comments. Also, if you want to see more from me, be sure to check out my other playlists. I also have presence on social media, as well as a channel on Twitch for live streaming. And if you have some extra money and you want to help out my channel even further, I have a Patreon where you can contribute and score some cool rewards. Thanks again, and until next time, this is the Quarter Guy, signing out.